Good morning, good morning. I'm laughing because Zamara helps me with this whole thing I'm trying to do with video. I mean, she's the producer, the director, the star sometimes. Uh, we have a Jerry built operation going here. It's kind of fun, actually. I wanted to say good morning to you. And if you see smoke coming over into the scene, that's incense. And it's Sai Baba incense I got in India. I went to India years ago, and well, I've been there many times. I love India. And I went to an ashram, Sai Baba's ashram, and got, among other things, blessings and all kinds of things. It was really pretty remarkable. But it made me think of the first time I went to India and how our perceptions of things color our lives. Because I was married at the time and we were on a cruise and we got off in India. And before we went, we'd never been, and we'd heard so many stories about this crazy country and thieves, and you have to be careful. And a man came over, he'd been to India, and we were at our house in the Napa Valley, and I'll never forget, this man came over and driving a Rolls Royce. He was wearing like a, a, a gold something around his wrist. He was dressed in like cashmere, and he comes in and he's going to tell us about India. And you know, my perceptions at that time were just, well, I was naive. I didn't know. I hadn't traveled much. I didn't know about the world. And this man sat there and told us not to give anything to the beggars in India. Now, when I think about that, I look back on it and I think how obnoxious, how without feeling for that man dressed, you know, in the best, saying, don't give to the beggars. What does that remind you of? It reminds me of what's happening in our country today with big business. You know, we can always say big business. Some businesses do a good job, and we need business. But we need to help other people, and they shouldn't reach a point where they're begging. No one should. And the reason I even thought about this was, lighting that incense and smelling it and thinking of India. And what was so interesting later, I went to India with a group of children, and we met with Indira Gandhi, and I was so focused. It was glorious, and I had a little boy from India traveling with me, and he was just wonderful. I hear from him, Deepak. No, what is his name? Well, I'll think of it. Anyway, there's so many kids. You know, I'm like the old lady who lived in the shoe. I have so many kids, I don't know what to do. I can't even think of their names sometimes. But I have a list, and I sure know them when I see them. But anyway, the trip was just wonderful. And then I made many trips there. And then I went to the ashram, as I mentioned earlier. And my niece went with me. And we had the most fun, glorious, silly time, certainly in my life. And no one tried to steal anything from me. It was a whole different perception of the way I looked at the country and the way I looked at myself, perhaps, and my knowledge of the world a little more, and the compassion that perhaps I had developed. But funny that you do have to be careful, because when you give something in India, you have to do it quietly and separately from the crowd, or you will be just overrun with these kids. We stopped on the way to the ashram. We were in a taxi of a driver who was like, driving in India is like crazy. You know, there are camel carts and elephants on the road, and they drive on the wrong side, and I don't even know what the right side is anymore. It could be like, oh, shut your eyes and just go. But we stopped at some little place. The driver stopped and went into this store, I guess, on the road. And all these little kids swarmed our car. And so I wondered what I could give them. So I gave them some pencils, and they didn't like the pencils. And I looked at these children, and in this case, which isn't true most of the time, they looked very well cared for. This was just a hobby for them. They were just having fun. So I rolled down the window. You have to be careful of all this. You really do. But I rolled down the window and I said, "You have beautiful teeth. I'm sure you're having wonderful nutrition as a good teeth." And these little kids got so mad at me. They stuck their tongue out at me. It was kind of wonderful. And when we went to the ashram, finally, when we got there, it was a long trip. We went to Pudukkode. And inside, it's very clean, and there's a bakery, and you eat there, and then you go to darshan, which is a blessing in the mornings and in the evening. But just outside the gate, it's clamorous. It's the real India, and we had to go out there to get our beds. And in doing so, I saw all these little girls. Oh, and my heart just goes out to little girls. And they were in their ragged saris, and I took all of them, and there were like 20, into a store and bought them saris. And they put them on, and they danced in the dirt, and it was such a good feeling. So we what is it? We entertain angels unawares so often. All right, angels, have your coffee. Have a good day. Bye-bye.